As Mazda's powerful rotary engine takes center stage, raising eyebrows and sparking debate, could this revolutionary technology redefine the landscape of the EV industry? At an interesting time when most automakers are facing the future with newer engine systems that offer better cost and efficiency, Mazda is looking into the past by revisiting its old and abandoned rotary engine. The rotary engine is an internal combustion engine using a different process. They've announced a new rotary engine with impressive features that could very well shake up the entire EV industry. But why take the risk of reviving a failed system? And what makes Mazda so confident that it would succeed right now? The biggest and most powerful vehicle that Mazda has ever built. Join us as we explore the story behind the engine, the stunning upgrades they've made, and how it's expected to work. Rotors, which function as pistons, and fixed pinions, which determine the direction of the rotors. History of the rotary engine. Wow. The inspiring story behind Mazda's new engine goes way back to 1925. Ford's Model T at the time dominated the roads in terms of sales and performance, but had a heavy four-cylinder engine that easily knocked and overheated. GM's Chevrolet Superior D series were pretty much dead on arrival because they had engines that weren't very reliable. Dodge cars were among the most powerful, but always rattled due to unbalanced piston parts and had annoying engines that needed frequent oiling and produced a lot of noise with overly excessive vibrations. The auto industry desperately needed a smoother and more efficient solution, and that was when the rotary engine came in. This engine was promised by famous engineer and visionary Felix Wankel, and he promised to accomplish this through NSU, a small German firm specializing in building the cheapest cars and motorcycles on the market. Felix Wankel was a famous engineer born way back in 1902, who dreamed of proving everything he had learned about traditional engines wrong. As early as age 17, he already had his idea for what would later become known as a rotary engine. This machine would not use pistons like regular car engines, but would rather spin in a circular motion that made engines lighter, smaller, and smoother than the regular ones that cause a lot of problems. When the idea struck his mind, Felix wasted no time in drawing out his ideas in a way he believed would never produce vibrations and loud sounds like most engines did. So, from late 1925 to 1937, Felix got to work on making his wild dream a reality. But as expected, things weren't as simple as he envisioned. Though he had successfully built a lab in Heidelberg with the best engineers his small pockets could afford, it wasn't until 1951 when he finally got the chance to take his work seriously. This was primarily because of the Second World War, and when things finally settled down in Germany, he didn't have the funds to keep his lab going and had to work for another company called NSU. And thanks to their expertise in making cars and motorcycles, Felix finally had access to much better tools and all the money he needed to bring his engine to life. Now this was where things got interesting. By late 1957, after years of dedication and hard work, Felix Wankel's engine ran for the first time. The company watched in amazement as the engine ran in a triangle-shaped rotor spinning inside an oval chamber, instead of pistons moving up and down like it was with traditional engines. Better yet, it created the same power cycles, but with fewer moving parts and less weight. This meant less fuel consumption and much better efficiency. At first, the machine overheated and almost fell apart. But thanks to his partner Hans Deripaschke, who made some adjustments to his earlier models, this addition worked perfectly without any of the issues that plagued the more popular engines made by Ford and GM.
It was publicly demonstrated by NSU through a press conference not long after, and the event was a huge success that quickly got the attention of much bigger companies.
Most of them wanted to closely observe and take notes on how the engine works so they could produce a better version of it by themselves. But only one company wanted to support NSU to make more editions of this engine and improve them with its bigger resources. Interestingly enough, the company that wanted to help them wasn't a German firm, but a Japanese car maker based in Hiroshima called Mazda. This company was headed by Tsuni Matsuda, and he saw the engine's potential to make Mazda's best cars stand out globally from the much bigger brands. Even though Mazda was much bigger than NSU, it too was known for making budget cars that were barely impressive to anyone. Their success was based on luck and affordability, and different new competitors were rising to take their spot. Sunji Matsuda hoped the Wankel rotary engine would be the key to rising higher in the auto industry, and for a while he was correct. The first rotary engine made by Mazda was the 1967 Cosmos Sport 110S. It was relatively smaller than most marketed high-performance cars and ran on a twin-rotor engine. Many Japanese users claimed it was fun to drive, and it grew so popular in Europe and America because of how well it performed, despite being much smaller than most performance cars. As the years went by, Mazda continued improving their rotary engine and used it in upcoming models like the RX-3 and beyond. But perhaps the most famous rotary car was the RX-7 that launched in 1978. And it was the car that made rotary engines popular because it was one of the lightest, fastest, and most affordable automobiles in the mid-range market. It was reportedly so good that it garnered a cult following that lasted for decades. It was so successful that the RX series didn't launch the next generation until 2003 with the RX-8. This was a four-door sports car that was also marketed as a sports vehicle, but with more practical and impressive features for the average Joe. Mazda was still relatively successful with this launch, but sadly enough, it was also at this point where the cracks began to show. Even though the more recent RX cars had the coolest designs and performance, each upgrade caused the machine to burn more gas than piston engines. On top of that, the engines weren't durable enough. This was because of the apex seals that kept the rotor inside the chamber. Due to the constant circular motion of the engine parts, the seals wore out quite easily, causing the cars to gradually slow down in speed and overall performance with each passing year. Every upgrade tried to fix this by simply cranking up the performance of the newer models. And while that made up for the wear and tear of the engines, it also increased carbon emissions in the RX-6, 7, and 8 models. It also didn't help that the world was becoming increasingly aware of the dangers of carbon emissions on our climate during the 90s and early 2000s. And because of this, many countries came up with very strict rules on the kind of cars that were allowed into their borders. By 2012, when the RX-8 failed to meet most newer standards, Mazda stopped making rotary-powered cars entirely. All these issues beg the question, how did such a genius idea on paper quickly turn to a corporate nightmare for Mazda? What were the biggest flaws of this engine? And how does Mazda's newest edition promise to address each of them? As we shall see, most of the answers lie in the engine's design, how rotary engines work. So with all this in mind, stay with us as we break down the upgrades they've made with the new engine piece by piece, how the new engine works. Even though the announcement was made recently, work on this new engine began as far back as early 2013 at Mazda's Hiroshima headquarters in Japan, not long after their rotary cars were discontinued in Europe and the United States.
Hard bases, baby. Hard bases.
It started as a post-mortem analysis to find out what went wrong with the engine's original design by Felix Wankel and Hans-Dieter Paschke. In the middle of this long-term operation, Mazda had one goal in mind: produce an affordable engine that would bury Tesla in the rest of the competition. The first thing they focused on was the apex seals. For the RX-9 to live up to the hype, one key goal was to make the seal stronger and longer lasting than anything they had built before while keeping the shape of the housing the same. The latest prototypes implied during the announcement would use ceramic coatings with carbon-infused alloys to reduce heat and wear out. Next, they redesigned the chamber by reforming the shape of the rotor faces with wider holes and patterns on the surface of the rotors. There would be a better inflow of air and fuel for smoother ignition. But it doesn't stop there. The new engine promises to also give much better oil control than anything Mazda has ever produced before. This is because they plan on digitizing certain parts of the engine with advanced AI software that would detect the real-time need of the main parts of the machine and give just the right amount of oil at the right time. This would prevent over-lubrication and waste of oil while still protecting the seals from breaking apart. Today, they are testing systems that are able to recycle some of the vapor from the oil by sending it back through the engine so it could be used more efficiently. Through this method, Mazda hopes to solve the carbon emission issues that plagued the RX models of the previous generations. The new engine takes things a step further by integrating better cooling systems that circulate coolants in a more efficient way. Given the nature of the reports, it is most likely that the coolant would be a hybrid organic acid substance supercharged with silicate additives to protect the metal parts of the engine at a pH that works well with aluminum. It would also have a long life formula of at least 5 years or 150,000 miles with nanoceramic particles that naturally create a heat shielding layer over time. Through these methods, engines would potentially last longer with more usage than wearing out with high usage. But to be safe, Mazda also incorporates better heat-resistant materials for the internal parts, including the rotors and side housings to help the engine survive high speeds without warping when the natural layers of nanoceramic don't hold up. This leads us to perhaps the most interesting aspect of the new engine's design and architecture, and that is Mazda's new range extension system. To everyone's surprise, Mazda has chosen to use the rotary engine as a range extender for future hybrid engines in other cars, apart from the upcoming RX models. It would be their new system of combustion that is designed to give higher performance with very low input. How could this possibly work? By making the rotary engine charge the electric motor through the car's battery, instead of powering the wheels directly like it was in older RX models and most traditional vehicles, the engine would run at a steady speed to control emissions and optimize fuel use while also avoiding the high stress that plagued the previous RX models. Interestingly enough, this isn't the first time this idea was used by Mazda, as it was the blueprint for the Mazda 2 EV rotary range extender concept not too long ago. But as exciting as this is, Mazda isn't putting all its eggs in one basket. The firm has a much bigger plan in motion. Recent reports show that Mazda has 2 prototypes undergoing testing, and the second version of the new rotary engine delivers power directly to the wheels. This version is expected to be more powerful and produce at least 300 horsepower for a twin rotor setup of just over 1.5. The second version of the rotary engine is currently being tested in Japan and Europe. And insider reports imply Mazda intends to reveal the final version between both prototypes in the next few years. But even with this in mind, there is so much hype surrounding the upcoming engine that it's easy to forget that Mazda is plunging itself once again into a highly competitive market where many companies have already gone far ahead in electric and hybrid technology. But what about the luxury models? Does Mazda stand a chance of winning in that regard? Let's find out. Will it succeed? The best way to know this is by comparing it with another force within the EV industry that it is projected to dominate, and that is Lucid Motors with their Lucid Air Sedan Dream Edition that launched in October of 2021. We have an engine that goes on a total range of over 500 m on a single charge. This goes above and beyond anything a rotary engine can offer in terms of fuel efficiency, and that only scratches the surface of what the Lucid Air has to offer. With an acceleration reaching 60 miles per hour in 2.4 seconds, even a much newer EV company is projected to outperform Mazda's RX-9 with their 4-year-old R1T electric pickup truck that was also released in late 2021. It gives over 300 miles of range with an acceleration to 60 miles per hour in 3 seconds. Still from 2021, we have the highly beloved Volkswagen ID.4. It has many features Mazda's rotary engine at this stage would struggle a lot with, including high-tech features that would likely not be found in the RX-9 due to the limitations of the rotary system. BMW's 9 launched in November of that same year and would stand as a difficult rival for the RX-9 through its higher performance. It gets almost concerning when we notice that Toyota's upcoming BZ4X is the latest car, with an engine that could compete with what Mazda has in store today, and it came out in June 2022. From these examples alone, it's clear that re-entering the market would be very tough for Mazda, especially with the problems that plagued the rotary system still present today, when compared to the more advanced systems that came afterwards. So, with these examples in mind, how would Mazda destroy the EV industry when it runs on a far outdated system? The answers are complicated, so let's break them down. To stand out in this highly competitive market, Mazda has to be very bold and aggressive with its approach. They would have to come up with a unique and innovative solution that handles all the problems that would be caused by their rotary system. Mazda's challenge boils down to 2 major problems: offering a car that is environmentally friendly while also staying true to the thrilling driving experience its brand is known for. To do this, Mazda could make themselves stand out by making the RX-9 a bit different with a higher focus on sporty handling and agile performance than the much higher range and fast acceleration that Tesla is known for. This means that Mazda would have to be careful with their marketing of the RX-9 as a sports car by focusing more on safety and comfort over speed and thrills. The RX-9 would need to be the perfect balance that can appeal to anyone willing to try. But that isn't the only challenge they would have to address. For example, let's say the plan works, and many people choose to buy the RX-9 over Tesla's Model S Plaid. Mazda's biggest challenge once that happens would be keeping up with the massive production abilities of Tesla. Mazda will more than likely struggle with mass production once their products get in high demand. The only way to keep their RX-9 and future models in high demand would be by making their vehicles affordable from the start, without sacrificing the quality of the promised driving experience. This means selling their cars at a loss for a short amount of time if necessary. If Mazda can take the hit by offering a more budget-friendly hybrid that doesn't compromise in performance, the company would likely grab the attention of price-sensitive customers who like EVs, but struggle to choose because of how expensive they usually are. Another good strategy considered by Mazda is tapping into the growing demand for smaller vehicles that could easily fit in tight parking spaces. While the company has always been known for making sports-themed cars that were smaller than most others from the competition, they weren't suitable for urban environments and users who didn't care much about that aesthetic. On top of that, the best high-performance models are known for being larger than regular cars in ways that are beyond practical. Take the Tesla Model S, for example. Even though it is a sedan, it is still relatively long compared to other cars that are typically used in cities. It also becomes a pain to use in crowded urban areas where parking spots are smaller and more limited. Mazda could capitalize on this by making the RX-9 more compact and efficient in a way that instantly catches the attention of potential customers and fans of EVs. One of the key aspects of Mazda's vision for the RX-9 is to drastically improve the battery life and range of the model. In fact, Two of the most important factors buyers generally think about when buying an EV is the charging speed and battery life. Range anxiety is a problem that has lasted as long as the EV industry, so much so that it has become part of the daily lives of people who rely on electric cars. Love it or hate it, every user who heavily relies on EVs prepares for the worst with almost every long drive at this point. But Mazda could benefit more if they focus on making their cars compact enough to rely on smaller batteries that charge faster, but still produce the same results as the much heavier Tesla models with supercharging capabilities. But even with all that, Mazda as a brand is still a much smaller player in the EV market with fewer resources compared to Tesla. However, that doesn't mean they can't dominate the market as promised. If they focus on building a hybrid vehicle that appeals to specific customer needs that aren't provided by pure EVs, they wouldn't need to outclass Tesla in anything, but still find success by carving out its own space in the rapidly expanding industry. So what do you think? Will Mazda dominate the EV industry with their new Rotary engine, or will the project crash and burn like it did over a decade ago? Right now, on this great American hard basis news and information channel, there is a creator working hard to get your view, even a simple click for a like, loosing hope, begging for your comment, so I know I have touched your life in any way. Here on Hard Basis, we search for the best news and information items you may never see anywhere else. To help you, the viewer, get a laugh or keep informed, even make you think. But I can't reach more folks just like you without your support, so please consider joining for a limited time. Your subscription is free and free for life. You will sleep well every night knowing you reached out and clicked. You will barely be able to sleep waiting for our next video, so won't you today help and subscribe, like, and share? Help me help you. It won't disappoint, and thank you in advance. Now back to our story, compassionate ones.